guest today is not just a financial educator and money coach. She's also an attending physician in one of the most reputable hospitals in the U.S. So yes, you heard that right. She's a physician and a financial coach. And she's found a way to consistently create content on YouTube, plus co-host a podcast. You get to hear how she prioritizes her time so she can manage all of this well, but she also shares what drove her toward content creation in the first place, why her continued focus is on creating joy for herself and for others, and how she actually researches quote-unquote competitors' content to learn structures, styles, and potentially viral topics so that she can recreate them through her own lens specifically for her audience. Brittne, thank you so much for being here with me today. How's it going?
Well, it's going great. And I want to say thank you for the invitation. I'm happy to have this conversation with you. I love your platform and just the focus of your platform. So thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first up, let's give folks a little taste of what you do and why you do it. So just give me the rundown about your brand, More Joy, More Wealth. I love this entire concept already, so tell us about it.
So I am a physician by training, and I am still practicing in the hospital seeing patients. With becoming a physician, because I'm a woman from Flint, Michigan, from humble beginnings with no legacy of wealth, that left me with a burden of student loan debt. And we know for anybody who has a graduate degree, those degrees are very expensive. So I graduated from medical school and I had $131,000 of student loan debt. When I paid it off, $138,000 in 2 years and 9 months, I started sharing that on social media. And you know what happens on social media. People start to see it. They ask you questions in the DMs. And I said, oh, well, there is a need for this. There's a need for this information because there are many people who are like me who are still struggling with the burden of debt. And they don't understand how to manage their finances to foster a life of joy. So I created the business More Joy, More Wealth as a financial coaching business for women in healthcare, helping them to understand how to create joyous moments within their lives while implementing tailored money strategies. Because money is going to look differently. Our utilization is going to be different depending on who we are, right? And so we want to make sure that we're using it as a tool to foster joy. So that's my start. And now I share my message on social media, on YouTube, and I've partnered with another woman physician, and we have the Wealth Minded MD podcast, where we also teach people in healthcare mostly how to create moments of joy with their finances.
Yeah. Okay. Super important because yes, I know as you're pursuing any kind of medical profession, sure, there might be a great paycheck at the end of that road, but the process to get there is very expensive. And that's, I think, what a lot of medical professionals struggle with. And that debt can really hold them back in a lot of ways. And then you could probably speak to this, but I feel like that's really coupled with this idea that okay, you're a doctor, so now you have a BMW and the biggest house on the block, and this kind of perception of wealth. But that doesn't count. I always say you never know what's going on behind closed doors because there could also be a lot of big bills that they're still working through from medical school or just from any degree, right? Because education's expensive these days. So in your coaching, what is your perspective on that? Do you see that a lot? Or are you really seeing more of a level-headed daily life for these physicians Or is it that societal expectation of the BMW and the big house?
I think we all are very vulnerable to lifestyle inflation, particularly persons in healthcare, physicians, dentists, pharmacists, because we've delayed gratification for so long. I mean, when I started working as a resident physician, I had 4 years of undergrad, 4 years of medical school, and then now I'm finally starting to make some money. But I'm working 80 hours a week and I'm making $60,000. It's like, I'm making pennies comparatively. Now I'm a higher income earner, as a attending physician. But I say that to say that I've delayed my gratification for so long. And once I started earning, even though $60,000 is about the average, the amount of time that I was spending working and the amount of debt that I had accumulated, it did not feel sufficient. So once you make the quote unquote doctor's salary, you're like, yes, this is my moment for me to go and purchase the BMW or for me to purchase the big house, to go on the fancy trips. And what I like to encourage people is to understand that you have to do kind of the hard things first so that you can live the life of abundance. And there is a way in which you can do it that still fosters joy. In my coaching, I help a lot of women who unfortunately have significant amounts of debt, like vast amounts of high interest debt, be it personal loans, car loans, credit card debt. And with that burden of debt, it comes with a lot of emotional baggage as well, financial trauma, guilt, shame, especially if you are someone who has achieved many accolades in your career and your profession, but when you look at your finances and your bank account, it doesn't reflect that, right? So there's kind of like this internal dissonance of identity that you are facing. And how I have helped women to overcome that is by the focus of joy. That's why my company is called More Joy, More Wealth. Because when you focus on joy, and studies have shown this, when you focus on the things that bring you joy, not the Joneses, because the Joneses are probably broke.
Right.
But when you focus on the things that bring you joy, like pure joy that exceeds circumstances and exceeds time, then you're going to have enough. Because you're not overspending because you're bored now. You're not overspending because you're lonely or you feel guilty or you're trying to heal another part of you that has not been addressed. So that's a lot of what I do. I think that you can definitely still live a life of abundance as you're paying down your debt. And that definition of abundance should be tailored to you. It's not going to look the same for everyone.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you, because you just brought that back to abundance for me, just naturally with it, and that's why I knew this would be, a great alignment as far as our interview together. So I appreciate that. Now, the question in the back of my mind is, okay, so you are still very much practicing, working full time, and you have time to create a YouTube channel and a podcast and financial coaching practice. How do you do this?
Well, I can say, Virginia, that it is not easy. And sometimes I'm like, oh my goodness, what have I gotten myself into? I try to practice reflection, not necessarily meditation all the time, but at least moments of reflection to sit with myself to say, okay, what is giving me energy right now? And what is consuming my energy? Is this a task that I can delegate to someone else? Or is there a way to make this task more joyful? For example, if I have to clean my home, because I feel better when I walk into a clean home, but I'm not a clean person, honestly. I'm not a neat person, I'm a clean person. There's a difference.
Yes.
There's a difference. But when I walk into a nice and tidy space, it makes me feel like this is freedom. I can create. I can relax. But I don't always like to organize and tidy up my space. So then I think about, okay, how can I either delegate that task by using some of my other resources, which is money, as a tool to foster that sentiment of freedom, relaxation, and creativity? Or how can I make that task more enjoyable? Let me put on some jazz music. Maybe I'll make myself some tea, make it smell very nice and clean up in a surrounding that is in fostering that joy and relaxation. So that's one of the ways that I do it. But honestly, I get a lot of help and I pay for help. I make sure that I don't just relish money for the sake of having a lot of money, but I use it to create impact in my world. And that might mean impact for myself personally, for my family, but also for my community and in my business. So I have someone who helps me in the home often to do some of these tasks that I don't enjoy doing and to create space and time for me to do these things. I also leverage technology and AI to make me work a bit more efficiently. And I double down on things. So I do many things, but they're kind of in the same niche. My YouTube channel is about finance. My podcast is about finance. When I'm coaching, it's about finance. So I am able to pair, and I'm not just teaching about finance, but I'm teaching about finance to people who are in healthcare. So there's that parallel, that synergy there. So I've tried to find ways to align things so that I am capitalizing on my time, but also niching down enough that it's not over consuming, that I'm trying to learn so many different things on different platforms. I'm sticking to my lane, which is finance for people in healthcare.
Yeah. I love that. Okay. So talk to me a little bit more about the help that you get. I grew very tired of reading books about optimizing your life and, outsourcing and whatever, because every single one of them just tells you hire a housekeeper. Come on, give me some more, right? So I got really excited when I read a book recently that gave me step-by-step detail on how to outsource my inbox management of my personal email to my team. Mm-hmm. And, that was one of the things that I had held on to because, God, it's my email, right? My kids' stuff is coming in there. My bills are coming in there. If I need to reset my banking password, it's in that email. It's just kind of a little scary.
Yes.
In addition to all the business dealings that you have, you're negotiating contracts or whatever in your email. So I had held on to that for a while because I just could not figure out how to outsource that piece. So that's just one tiny example. A little bit deeper than, okay, hire a housekeeper, don't do your own laundry, that type of stuff. I needed help in the business. And I know other financial professionals do too. So is there anything tips around that you can share that's that level deeper of how you outsource things or the help that you get?
Yes. And I'm so proud of you for outsourcing your email. I have not taken that leap yet, Virginia. So you need to give me the tips on
okay.
that. When I started my business, it was very simple. I had a few clients. I did everything on Google, basically Google Drive, Google Documents. We sent emails. And now that things are a little bit more complex and I want to ensure consistently, which I think is required for growth, that I've had to outsource a lot. So I ask myself, what are the things that I need to be present for so that I can foster joy, so that I can foster efficiency, and so that I can create wealth? Those tasks oftentimes are not a lot of the back end things. I try to make sure that I'm forward facing. So, I have a housekeeper, I have someone who cooks because my kids don't care if I prepare the meal or not. They care if I'm able to play with them or spend time putting a puzzle together for them. So some of these tasks that are still needed because I don't want to eat out every day, that's very expensive. And I've always grown up in a household with home cooked meals. So I have outsourced that, but we have someone who cooks home cooked meals for the family. In my business specifically, when I record a YouTube video, I have a video editor. I have purchased apps and things to help me. So now I script all of my YouTube videos, which definitely shortens the time for creation because I'm using a teleprompter. So I have the video editor with the script and they're able to edit the video. I've given them very specific directions on the type of video that I want, the background music, the style, the branding, and all of that. I have someone who manages my social media, who engages with various accounts. I have someone who also helps me to clean my business email and to organize files, to help me to just give me a nudge if there's something in the DMs that they can't respond to and they need me to actively engage or to respond to a question from a client. So I've created this system that has helped me to be successful and work more efficiently. I can say one of the struggles in doing that is relinquishing, right? Letting go of control.
Yeah.
And there are times where content goes out and I'm like, I don't know if I would have said that way.
Yeah. The phrasing's a little off or
Or, I probably would have put a beauty filter on this one because makeup wasn't good that day, And while it might not be to the exact standard that I would have done is better than perfect. And it helps me to achieve that goal of consistency. So I think focusing on your why and also acknowledging your strengths and your weaknesses. If it's taking me 5 hours to edit a video on YouTube and it does not look as good as someone else's, why am I spending the time to do that when I have the finances? And I think oftentimes we really just give money significant power, but time for me has become the most valuable and is where my time is a reflection of my values. So that's just what I've tried to do, is to honor my time and honor relationships so that I can have more time to spend with my family and loved ones.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. You hit the nail on the head for me sure, someone could edit things themselves. They could produce their own show. And it could look pretty decent, right? But I'm thinking, okay, where else could you have used that time? And because the, practice isn't there, we use the 10,000 hours example. You've probably put in 10,000 hours in financial coaching, in, your physician practice, in the healthcare industry. Probably not so much in editing video. So while you can do it, you're spending the time and it doesn't look near as good as what a professional editor would produce, right? Which is why you hired someone. So that thought process, though, sounds so reasonable when we say it out loud, yet so many financial professionals are still kind of stuck in that. And they're like, oh, I can do it. I could do it myself, And I just find that so interesting. Was there anything in particular that helped you arrive at the fact that your time is so precious? Or, did someone tell you this? Was this like a lesson instilled as you as a child? How did this come about?
As a child, because I grew up in a single mother household with my mother, I retrospectively did the calculations. We actually made for a family of 4. She made under the federal poverty line at points in her life. And she is the queen of discounts. Even today, I was talking to her. We no longer have this struggle, but she's like, I love asking for discounts. And I bought you this, $1.50 shirt. I said, Mom, I don't know if I want that shirt.
Yeah. Thank you, Mama.
So I give that backstory to say that money was superior to all things. We would jump through hoops in order to save $1 because we didn't have much. So it seemed that time was more abundant than money. But as someone who now no longer struggles with money. Like as a physician, I could pick up a shift. There's always a need. I could pick up a shift, spend, one day or not a full day, 24 hours, but maybe 10 hours at the hospital. And, I could make $1,000-2,000 depending on the pay rate. And so for me, it's like, okay, money is all around. Money is something that I can make so quickly. And what I will not get back is the gap between my birth date and my death date. And unfortunately, as a woman from Flint, Michigan, I've seen too many people prematurely die. And I want to make sure that I am spending my time to bring myself fulfillment so that can overflow into the world. And so for anybody who's still doing their editing, let me say one thing. When I started out, I did my editing. That's how I learned. How I learned that, okay, if something is broken, this is how I can do a quick fix instead of being reliant on someone else. So I think crafting and honing some of those skills, like the bare minimum, what you need to put out to make a good enough video so that you can stay consistent, is important. But once you've developed that, give it away. Like do it enough to develop the skill and then give that away so that you can focus on revenue generating activities or self-instilling activities. Learn a new skill, spend more time with your family, go for a run, do whatever you need to do so that you can make sure that you are showing up as the best self. And that gap in between your birth date and your death date is not something that is filled with regret.
Thank you. I love that. It's just such a good reminder. I think no matter the profession or where you're from or, any variable, it's just a really good reminder to use our time here wisely and to do good.
Yeah.
So let's shift just a little bit. Talk to me about the thought process behind starting a YouTube channel, starting a podcast. And I know in the beginning you said you were sharing your story on social media. There was clearly some, questions there and engagement, and people were needing this information and really interested in what you had to say there. So walk us through like the timeline and like the order of operations as to when you created these things. And the thought process with each new piece. It's like, okay, I got to start a website. Okay, let me get some Calendly or something so people can book appointments with me. Then did you start the YouTube channel or did you start creating content first? How did this work out?
Yeah. So I can say that I've always been entrepreneurial in spirit, mostly to solve my own problems. So before getting into financial coaching, Virginia, I actually started to develop a hair product that I even got patented and produced in China.
Oh my gosh.
Like mass produced in China. But I'm a woman of faith, and that factory in China had a fire right as my product was going to ship. And I believe that was divinity, that was divine intervention, because there were some, I don't know about you, like I kind of stick to the sunken cost fallacy theory where I'm like, oh, I've invested so much time. I've invested so much energy. I've invested so much money. Like I got to keep moving forward. This is just a little bit of a hurdle. I can overcome this thing. But there were flaws, right, in my product. There was flaws in the design. There was flaws in the implementation, especially thinking about competitor analysis. And I knew that. And although it fostered a little bit of insecurity, I kept moving forward. But I really believe that the fire was divine intervention. So I say that to say that my entrepreneurial journey just didn't start on, oh, I have this grand idea that I'm going to go and do financial coaching. There's been iterations, there's been setbacks, there's been pivots along the way. And once that factory burned down, I kind of still held on to say, hey, can you produce this product? Maybe I could find someone else, blah, 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 blah. And it just didn't happen. From there, though, I had honed several skills of how to do market testing, of how to reach out to various brands, how to run Facebook ads, although I don't run Facebook ads, but I had honed that skill. How to find a supplier who could produce a product and get the product patent. So I take with me all of that skill set, and then I became a mother. Mm-hmm. And as a mother, I want my daughter, Brooke, she was spending a lot of time on her back, not too much time on her back, but the babies kind of develop the bald spot in their back of their head. And as a woman with curly textured hair, I had gotten into wearing satin hair-lined accessories, but I couldn't find anything for my child. So my aunt started to produce them. And then we opened an Etsy shop and we opened a Shopify shop. And so now I have this family business where my aunt is sewing headbands. My daughter is a model for these things. And then I pay off my debt and I start sharing that on social media. Yeah. And so what I say is like, it didn't all come together of, I built a website, I started a YouTube channel. I think that there's been an evolution of just me focusing on what is the problem that I have right now? How can I solve that problem for myself? How can I test it to see if other people also have this problem? And then how can I now understand through reflection the skills that I've learned that I could take with me to the next step? So once I started the financial coaching business, it was mostly just through social media. I had no website. I had no business, actually. When I first started coaching, but I knew how to get an LLC because I hadn't done it for the other businesses, right? And so I waited until I had my first client who signed the contract and submitted a payment before I started my coaching business officially. And then from there, I coached a few clients, then I built a website. I think oftentimes we look at businesses who are well established and we think that we need a website, we need the Calendly, like we need all of these things to get started. Really, all you need is a problem that somebody wants to pay for and a passion to solve it for them or to help them solve it, And I had those prerequisites and that's how I got started. Then from there, my husband sent me this YouTuber who is also a doctor and he was making YouTube content and did very well. And he's like, hey, babe, you can do this. So I bought, I actually didn't start with a camera. I started with my iPhone and that's it. I started with my iPhone with a tripod, or I set my iPhone up on some books and I recorded my first video. I'm like, it's a bad video, but I did it.
Everybody's first one is a bad one. Let's just get that out there.
And I send it to some friends and family and I say, hey, share this with your network. Mm-hmm. And from there, it's been growing ever since. And I say that along this journey, I think the biggest skill or tool that you can have is not a website. It's not a Calendly link. It is just a belief that this is something worth doing, that you can make lasting impact, and that when it gets hard or when no one watches, you're still going to do the thing. And if you could start there, then all the rest, all the technical stuff, building the systems and the structure, you'll develop that along the way.
Yeah. Yeah. So this speaks so clearly to the idea of, just starting with something and with resolve that it's not going to be perfect. Don't try to start perfect. Try to start okay, right? Like, pay attention to what's in your background. Does your house look messy? Okay, let's try to get some good lighting. It could be natural lighting. Maybe we face the window. There's little simple things that you can do just to get started, even without the $600 camera. And then, allow the brand and the voice and even the platforms to evolve over time. And so I love that you did that and that you have just such good advice on getting started. I think the thing that holds most people back, whether they be, legal professionals, medical professionals, financial professionals, all three of, I'm going to say y'all, have gone to school, are very educated, have spent lots of time honing your craft. And then to put your face on camera seems like this really scary space where you're subjecting yourself to even more judgment. So help the folks listening who are probably in one of those three professions, reduce the barriers and the fear around recording that first video, recording their 10th or 50th video. I don't feel like that fear ever actually goes away, but I think that voice quiets over time with practice. So what's your take on that?
I think you are so true and correct in that we've dedicated so much time and energy to learning and perfecting another craft to get up and do something differently or take the risk to put ourselves out there on platforms that may or may not be perceived by academia as in alignment with your professional duties and responsibilities.
Right. I think you hit it right there. It's not, you're sitting there thinking like, okay, who am I now? Like an influencer? Like, what am I doing?
Exactly. And honestly, Virginia, I was in hiding. I was in hiding for many years. And I would say that this is probably one of the biggest struggles that I've had as an entrepreneur is I've prided myself on my pedigree of academic institutions. Like I went to the University of Michigan, Go Blue, as a Northwestern, WashU, and then I worked at Emory, and now I'm a physician at Boston at one of the Harvard-affiliated hospitals. And I'm like, who are you to start a YouTube channel? Like, this has nothing to do with academics or being in medicine. I mean, I'm teaching women in healthcare about money. I have no legacy or track record. But what I've found is that I have experience. What I found is that I have something to share and to fill a gap. So my words of wisdom to anyone who feels shy or apprehensive about getting on a camera, well, one, you don't have to get on a camera to still have an impact. You can just use your voice through podcasting, or you can use your voice and have someone animate a whole video without you actually showing your face. And while that might feel comforting for you, you might feel more security in doing that. I think that the strongest connection that we can make with someone is like showing up, showing our vulnerability and saying, hey, this is me. This is what I'm doing. I'm sharing this message because I care about you. And I'm coming and presenting the fullness of who I am. So sometimes grounding ourselves in our why can help us to overcome all of the apprehension, all of the imposter syndrome that we might have with doing things that seem outside of what we have designed as our identity.
So good. Thank you for that. Would you be willing to share when you think about your content and what hit well with your audience? What pieces got a lot of traction or for what you consider kind of like gone viral for your platform? Was there anything specific that you did differently for those pieces of content? Is there any like SEO, something or another that you have dove down that rabbit hole and started adopting for when you create content? Like, what is working for you at this time?
The content creation and reflection, the analytics, it is so interesting sometimes, Virginia. I don't know if you felt that way as well. The first time that I went viral on Instagram was I was batching content. So if you are creating content, batch content, have your outfits out, like just change your shirt, keep the same jeans. Honestly, no one is looking with that level of detail. And if they are, then shame on them. They need something else to do.
Yes. They need to go be busy somewhere else.
So I can acutely recall this is a day that I had built out some nanny time for my kiddo, and I was batching content. And there was one piece of content where there was on Instagram, there's like the trending audio. So I was using the trending audio. I was walking to my car and I did the trending audio. It's like, I drive an old car because my car is 20 years old. So I drive an old car, and then I got in the car and I said, well, I don't care because I'm living debt free and I paid off my student loans and all of that. Now I have 2 mortgages because we're, investing in real estate. So, no longer debt free. But at that time, that was the content that hit. There was a signal that that content could work, but because one day I was getting out of my car and I said, hey, look at my car. Look at my husband's car. We had drive at that time. They were like 14 to 15 years old cars. But these are all the other things that we get to do. We get to travel the world. We get to live in a nice neighborhood. We get to make impact and have the careers that we desire. We have time freedom to some extent. We're not fully retired yet, but your car is a depreciating asset. And then I ask people, let me know who has the oldest car in the audience. So I say that to say that put the content out there, create various types of content and evaluate for signals. One of the things that I found that really works is people like to share, but not to be vulnerable, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I asked who has the oldest car. It was very easy for someone to say, oh, my car's just 3 years old, she's a baby. Or, oh, I drive, a old broken down car and I'm going to ride it till the wheels will fall off. They're 15 years old. It was really easy for people to connect and share, but they didn't have to be significantly vulnerable. When I ask a question about, let me know what type of debt you have, silence. No one wants to let you know if they have credit card debt, if they have student loans, personal debt. Like, that's too vulnerable.
Yeah.
So when I think about the content that performs the best is one that creates a connection and it really relates to people. And one that asks a question that allows people to share, connect without putting themselves out there to be significantly vulnerable. I've also seen that when I've shared my journey, that has resonated with people because it's very inspiring, I think. Many people still suffer with debt. I mean, student loan debt is something that is chaotic right now and all of the changes. And that burden really resonates with people at their core. I can say when I've coached clients, they feel like they're never going to get rid of their student loan debt. And so I know that. And by me sharing my story is inspiration that this too is possible for you. So if you had to choose some content, try to look for creating like a diversified mix of content and seeing where you can get a signal, creating content that allows for connection without significant vulnerability, and try to inspire by leveraging your own experiences in different forms that you can share a message with relatable, a problem that someone has.
Yeah. Thank you. That is all such good advice. And I love that piece about get them to share, but make sure it's not something vulnerable, like the year of your car or how, like that makes so much sense to me. And I'm hoping that any other financial professionals listening get some clues for their content from that. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Yay.
Now, when you are producing these YouTube videos, your podcast, all this content's going out, I know you have help, but I also know that the style, the actual content itself, like the topics and like how deep you go into the content, that's all up to you. So how do you source your topics? Do you do some research on the front end? Are you purely answering questions from your audience? Like, How have you found is like your best method to continuously being able to come up with something to talk about and something to help people with?
That is a great question. I am still formulating the best structure, but based upon how I've created content so far, I've done some research. So when I'm thinking about YouTube video ideas, I usually look at YouTube channels that are adjacent to mine. So speaking about personal finance or self-development in some ways, YouTube channels that are about like medicine or focused on healthcare professionals. And then I watch some of their videos to get an idea of the structure of their videos. Are they telling a story? Are they teaching on a whiteboard? Are they bringing other people on and having an interview? We're answering questions. So that gives me an idea of, okay, this is my target audience. Maybe it's not the topic that I specifically speak about, but this is what kind of these professionals like as far as a style of content or a format of content. Then I look to other financial educators and try to understand what topics they're presenting on and how that resonated with their audience. So there is one topic that you just see time and time again that I recently produced a video on is about your first 100K. And why your first 100K is so hard. And then after that, it really just snowballs and accelerates growth to 1 million. And so you can essentially collapse time. So I saw a few financial professionals doing that. And I thought about that topic and I say, okay, well, how does that relate to physicians? Actually, our first 100K is not that challenging if we do these things, right? Because once you become an attending, it is quite easy to put away $35,000 in savings if you are intentional and you do these things. So I took a concept that I had seen many professionals do, financial professionals, that resonated with their audience, got a lot of views. And then I put a spin on it, like my own touch, like, okay, this is why it's hard for everybody else. But if you are in healthcare, if you are a high income earner, you can actually get there faster. And you could become a millionaire faster than everybody else if you do these things. So that's what I do. I just try to look at other people to understand the format of videos that is really resonating with this specific type of audience. And then looking at my quote unquote competitors, not really competitors, but other financial professionals who are making content, what is resonating with their audience and how could I blend the two of making it a bit different and more specific for the audience that I'm serving.
Yeah. Such good advice there. That's actually something I said in a recent solo episode where I was teaching about SEO and boosting your growth and stuff. But it was like, hey, check out your competitors. And that feels weird at first. It's like, why would I look at what they're doing? I'm going to get so distracted. I'm going to, get that feeling like, oh, like they know what they're doing and I don't. Like there's all this kind of mind trash that can come with that. And when the real lesson there is just to learn like, hey, they got 1 million followers. They've been doing this a while. They have tested and tried, like, see what you can learn from them. That's not a bad thing, right? They're being a mentor to you and they don't know it.
Exactly. And it's not comparison for comparison's sake. Like you are going to look at their content to gain information, to look at the data so that you can incorporate that into your own content. And I don't remember the saying, you probably could clarify this a bit more, but it's like imitation is the greatest form of appreciation. And so, I think you are so right. It's like you're just appreciating their content. And yeah.
Well, and the other thing you said was just perfect. Like you're getting inspiration from this. You're seeing what topics hit, but you're not just reproducing that same content. You're putting your own spin on it. You're sharing it from your perspective and how it applies to either your life or your clients' lives or your audience lives. So it's not duplication. It's not a copy. It's not mimicking someone else. It's tweaking the content to help your specific people who are listening. And that's the most important piece. Like, sure, find the topic, get that inspiration, but then you have to share it through your lens. So I think your advice there is just on point. So Brittne, if you will, as we wrap up, tell us a little bit more about where we can find you, where we can follow you, learn what you're doing, cheer you on. And, if there's anything, freebies, like if there is anything that you want to offer to the audience to just get to know you better.
Oh, thank you so much. So you can find me on YouTube. My YouTube channel is Joyful Wealth. And if you're a podcaster or like to listen to podcasts, we have one, Wealth Minded MD. I also am on social media, just my name, Brittne, Brittne.
Yes.
No Y. Halford on Instagram and also LinkedIn. And, if you are someone, I know you really speak to a lot of financial professionals, but if there are other people in your audience who are just looking for a 30-day tool, I've created one, which is my 30-day success script, kind of taking you through some financial tips that I like to think about as far as building wealth, reducing taxes, tax liability, and creating additional streams of income. And that can be found on my website.
Yeah, I feel like that might be useful for anybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much for being here with me, Brittne. You shared such beautiful tips, and I appreciate your time with me today.
And thank you so much for having me.